In January 1943, FDR and Churchill arrived in newly liberated Morocco for a top-secret conference at Casablanca. Stalin was invited, but insisted it was too dangerous to leave Moscow. It was on the final day of the conference that FDR made real news. Without consulting Churchill, he announced uncompromising terms for ending the war against Hitler.
So then Roosevelt said, I feel that victory against Germany, true victory against Germany, can only be achieved by unconditional surrender.
But the purpose of Roosevelt's announcement was to stiffen Russian resolve, prove to Stalin that he should hang on, that America was serious about defeating Germany and intended to fight to the bitter end.
Some of Hitler's troops eventually did enter Leningrad, but not as conquerors. Outside, the tide was turning. Stalingrad, the first great Soviet victory. An entire German army destroyed.
Up until 1940, Hitler looked younger than he was in reality. After that, however, he aged rather quickly. Up to 1943, he looked his age outwardly. Later, his rapid physical deterioration was obvious. Professor Dr. Hans Karl von Hasselbach, deputy attendant doctor to Adolf Hitler.
Waldorf von Schirach came on June the 24th, Corpus Christi. He had a long and detailed conversation with Hitler, the contents of which I learned from Hitler the next evening. Schirach said unequivocally to Hitler that the war must be stopped somehow. Hitler said to him,
"What is he thinking? He knows as well as I that there's no way out now, unless I put a bullet through my head."
That was their last meeting. Niklaus von Below, Colonel, Luftwaffe Adjutant to Adolf Hitler.
Reichsfuhrer SS Heinrich Himmler and the others were now troubled. They responded with new plots, double cross, and more murder. The men who had to fight on in the name of Nazism knew the sides had changed in the soulless chill of a new Russian winter. Hitler ordered his men to stay and fight. As the fury of the Russian shock armies hit them, they fled, abandoning the sick and wounded. In a week, they found themselves not in Russia, but Estonia, heavy with a misery greater than anything they had known in this miserable war. In the Crimea, the Russians again trapped a whole German army. No retreat. The Crimea was lost, and with it more than 100,000 troops. Still hadn't happened, but the skies over German territory were filled with the bombs and bombers of the West, the British by night, the Americans by day. One of the prime targets, the long and dangerous run on the Plesty oil fields in Romania, Hitler's last source of natural petroleum.
Under General Berling, the Kosciuszko Division received its baptism of fire in the late summer of 1943 at the village of Lenino on the road to Smolensk. In September 1943, the Red Army recaptured Smolensk from the Nazis, and with it the forests of Katyn. In January 1944, a Soviet committee assembled at Katyn to investigate the Polish tragedy, the massacre of 16,000 Polish officers.
On September the 8th, 1943, Adolf Hitler attends the briefing at Army Group South headquarters in Zaporozhye in the Ukraine to discuss the alarming situation in the Donbass region with its commander, Field Marshal Erich von Manstein. In July, with German armored divisions suffering major losses, the offensive against the protruding Soviet front at Kursk fails. In March, under Manstein's command, the Wehrmacht has been able to stabilize the Eastern Front after Stalingrad with a hard-fought victory in the so-called Third Battle of Kharkov. but subsequently had to vacate the city in August 1943. The retreat begins almost everywhere on the Eastern Front.
Russian troops defeated the Nazis at Leningrad and Stalingrad. Hitler's troops were now in headlong retreat as Soviet divisions moved toward the Polish eastern border.
The Red Army was driving the Germans out of the Ukraine.